Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Prop Talk Podcast, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild. I'm your host today, Mikey Trudel, and joining us, filling in for Chris Call, we have Scott Buckwald.
Hello, Mikey.
Woo-woo. Yeah, welcome.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Always love doing this.
What is this, your third podcast or fourth?
Third or fourth, yeah, not including the one you actually did of me.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Welcome back. You're a great co-host. I'm always happy to have you fill in the seat.
It was great having the PMG limo pick me up this morning.
Yeah, I know. Sorry we couldn't send the helicopter this time, but
gives me something to look forward to.
Yeah, on your fifth time, the helicopter, we pull out the mark. So, we have a special episode today. Today we have a MacGuffin award-winning guest, and that is Property Master Jode Mann.
Hey, that sounded so nice. A MacGuffin Award winner.
I know. It feels good that we could actually say that for Prop Masters now, right?
It was a pretty crazy thing to get it, actually.
It was wonderful.
Yeah? What was your thoughts with the I guess we could spend a little bit of time on this since we're already on the topic, like the submission process and everything that you went through to get in there. Did you?
You know, it was interesting because I was contacted and said, well, aren't you going to submit for lessons in chemistry? Because my frame of mind is so non-award-ish because we've done this for how long and never been recognized. And so when they said it, I was like, okay, I guess so. And then, going through continuity photos and then figuring out how to lay it out. Luckily, I had the help of an art director who had done them before for the Emmys, because I said, Lori, what do I do?
Yeah, how do I put a packet together?
Yeah, and she goes, I do them all the time. So she was incredibly helpful, and then I submitted it, and then I kind of just went about my business, and then I got nominated, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is awesome, and then I did not think that I would win.
Yeah.
So, and so I went, and a friend of mine 2 nights before just said, you better write a speech just in case. And I was like, well, that feels weird.
Right? Doesn't that... I was thinking that too.
It's so new to us.
I know.
Just that mindset is not there to do that.
Yeah, and
to write it with the intention that, like, if I lose, I have to be okay. I wrote a speech and not feel weird about it.
Well, exactly. And that actually was part of the thought process that went into it, is like what I write in this speech ended up being a reflection of my career for me. And that was the intention in which I wrote it, of just like, first of all, being a woman, being an older woman in this industry. Obviously, Emily Ferry started us women off, and I worked at the ham prop room when I met Emily. And it's not like I went to prop college, as we were talking. Like I didn't study props, and then I so in writing that, it actually allowed me to gather my thoughts about why I do love doing this, and it's the collaboration.
Yeah.
And the newness every day, and the, I become an expert on something for 6 months, and then that's gone. Like I finished Pulse, and I could intubate you. Not that I want to.
I was going to ask you about that. Just having done a medical show, if you feel like when you come out of it, that if somebody who was not an actual doctor came across you, could you convince somebody that you were a doctor? Do you think you absorb enough that you could do med speak enough to sit at a hotel bar and convince people around you that you were actually a physician?
Right when I was in, that's really funny, and the med speak, because when I was prepping Pulse, and I was in Albuquerque, I was talking to a friend in LA, and I said, it's like learning a new language. I might as well be like learning Swahili.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then as our concept meetings and our production meetings went by, I found this familiarity and this comfort with the material. And I remember our med tech one time looked at me, he goes, listen to you. Yeah, we're going to need a seat collar, and we're going to need, and So when I'm in it, yes. Now, we finished shooting that last August, and I did another show that Now I have expertise in high-end things, but yes, while I'm in it, I think I could med speak it enough. Could you?
Well, I've never done a full medical show. I've done a lot of medical scenes, and a lot of it I've retained. But one of the things I like most about this career is that it lets me be kind of an action figure, that depending on what costume I put on, it's amazing how much I've absorbed over the years. Things like I've been an attorney, I've been a 16-year-old deaf girl, I've been an older former spy, I've been a police officer, I've been a doctor, I've been a mom. And you really get into it, because one of the things I've always said about a prop master is we have to be a character in the show that we prop. When you're propping something, you can't bring props in that are fulfilling your demographic. That you have to become the people you're propping, and in that course you end up learning so much about those different lives.
Totally. I used to joke around with Joe Rogan when we were doing news radio, and I would go, Joe, I am Joe Gorelli, you're not.
Right.
Like, I made those things, I came up with it, and we would laugh about it. But it's interesting to look at it that way, because and I think part of what I value, because I'm older and my old school training, and is shopping myself. Like,
I love doing the shopping.
Like, people, every show, like, they'll say, do you want a buyer? Nope. I'd like a key assistant to counterbalance some of my prep and some of the things I do. But 99% of the time, it's me going out there and picking, because when I'm at a prop house, it's like, oh my God, I didn't, like if I was doing you, Mikey, it's like, yeah, I'm going to give him a hydro flask. Oh, look, there's some Red Bull. Oh my God. Oh, let me take in some remote.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, as to your point, Scott, you become that person and you get immersed in it. And then for me, I get super excited about it. And also a lot of it is incidental. So I don't have to get approval on it. Right. It's like I can just say to my team that's on set, I want that to be next to Mikey. And they don't say, well, did the director ask for it?
No.
Right. Well, it's hard to have secondhand inspiration.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what has kept me engaged. Like, look, I'm not the best prop master, but I am one of the most enthusiastic, and I really do love what I do. So that can compensate for the fact that, I don't make stuff in my garage. I'm not that prop master.
Yeah.
But I know how to find the guy and tell them exactly what I want.
Which is important also. And I don't really think you could say who is and who is not the best prop master.
Right.
Because we all find our own little niche on how to do things.
Right.
And I love tinkering. And I've had crew members, like sometimes day players, are like, Scott, why are you spending so much time building that yourself? Why don't you have SAT do it? Or why don't you bring somebody in? And I particularly enjoy model making and tinkering. And if I get to solder a couple wires together and get some hot glue going, I love that. I absolutely enjoy doing it, and that's great. But I don't look any differently at you. If you don't like doing it, there's something else that you are doing, and we're both crossing the same finish line.
There's a lot of different ways to have passion as a prop master, I think. And I mean, just as long as you are passionate, I think that's a very important thing about it. You sound passionate.
I'm pretty enthusiastic about it. Yeah, I really do feel it. And I think also because I got into this field really oddly.
Let's talk about that. I'm really curious how you started and everything. Yeah.
I went to UCSB.
Are you from California then?
I'm from California, from LA. I went to UCSB and studied Eastern philosophy. Then
Eastern philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a direct link, though.
Yeah, exactly. And then I ended up transferring to Berkeley because I thought I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, and my boyfriend had moved to Berkeley, so let's be honest, that's, so okay, my boyfriend's there, wildlife biology, this is perfect. And my first quarter, I had been in a bad car accident in my freshman year. I was walking and got hit by a car.
At UCSB?
At UC, no, I was actually home in LA. It was on New Year's
Oh.
Day, and I was home for New Year's, and it was right in front of Taft High School.
Oh, wow.
So, and my leg was injured. So subsequently, I've had multiple surgeries on my legs. But so when I went to Berkeley and thought, okay, I'm going to be this wildlife biologist, and I get in these science classes, and they were fascinating. And at the end of the first quarter, I was on academic probation because no matter, and that was like the key. And this is what I tell like my son and my son's friends, like no matter how interesting something is, you just might not be good at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Or you might not have the passion for it.
exactly. So I was devastated. I took a quarter off. My parents let me take the quarter off, but I had to meet with the dean of the school. It was a small college in Berkeley. And he said, you can take a quarter off and then you come back and we're going to figure out a way for you to graduate. Because this is my junior year. I said, great. So I come back. We create a curriculum because I would panic in, I would go into an exam and I would just black out. I just, like the energy, I just panicked. And so I ended up creating a double major in environmental psychology, and it was cool. I did like work in like elementary schools and some religious institutions, and figuring out everything that entered into those environments. So it does kind of lead into propping now that I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
That like what works, what doesn't, and how you configure that. So I ended up graduating. Had always, and I was a few units short, and so I was going to, I think, University of San Francisco.
Was the degree was in the same major though?
Environmental psychology.
Was it? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and so I was taking some courses. I was having drinks with a friend of mine. I had a little bit of money left from my settlement and my accident. It was uninsured motorist, but there was money after my my accident, and I said to him, I always wanted to travel by myself. And we maybe were having a few beers. So I might have gone and just bought a one-way plane ticket to Europe by myself.
Oh.
And I was coming home for my sister's wedding, and my mom and dad were like, well, you have a lot of stuff. And I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
Like, I really didn't. Like, I went to college. I was lucky enough to go. And I came out of it having no idea about who I was or what I wanted to do. And the thought of being at my sister's wedding and, Jody, what are you doing?
Yeah. Getting asked the question by everybody in the relatives. Yeah.
And so I was going to Europe.
Yeah.
And God bless my parents. My mom was like, this was in the 70s, no phones, no computers, and my mother was just like, I hope you find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'll probably be gone 6 weeks. Well, I got back 8.5 months later.
Oh my God.
I got married. It was fantastic.
You globetrotting all around?
Yes, I did. And when I got back, I was staying with my parents. I didn't have any money. I needed to have another operation on my leg. So in order for me to have student status for me to be insured, I enrolled in West LA College.
Oh.
And I think I was taking, I swear, pantomime and real estate classes. So I was like, it was, because
That's
literally
exactly what it sounds.
I spent 8.5 months and still didn't know who I wanted to be. And my parents were moving. And if my mother told me once more how to pack a box correctly, like it was just going south. And there was a job board at West LA College. And there was a receptionist job at the hand prop room.
Oh.
And those 4 words were like, hand prop room. Like, what do those 4 words even mean? They made no sense to me.
You didn't connect it with the film industry or anything?
None.
No.
And I go to the interview. I had to borrow a dress from my mom's
You had
friend.
no idea what you were even going into.
No
what are they going to
idea.
ask me?
No idea. And I walked in, and it was the hand prop room, and it looked really, really cool. Honestly, these are my prep, looked really cool. Everybody was wearing jeans. That looked good to me. I was 23.
And you were in a dress?
I was in a dress,
Yeah.
yes. I thought, okay, well, this is good. I heard the owner swear, Alan Levine. I heard him drop the F-bomb, and I was like, I could probably work here.
Yeah.
And it was all men. And I
Yeah.
thought, this looks really fun.
Yeah.
And of course, they interviewed me and said, "Are you going to stay here, for like forever?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, definitely." I wasn't. I was going to
Yeah.
move back to Berkeley. And I started off as a receptionist there. And then about 6 weeks in, and I had another operation on my leg. So I was in a wheelchair there multiple times, but this was the first time. And then they tried me in accounting, and I made $100,000 error. And I was like, I was crying. I mean, obviously I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
But I was no accountant. And they said, okay. So then I ended up becoming the purchasing agent. And then I was Alan's assistant. And then I helped with the graphics department and then manufacturing. And then I just stayed in it, grew and grew and grew. And I left there after being there, I think, for 7 years.
Had you ever been on a set? Did you ever make it to an active set or see what propping was all about?
No, I prepped everybody. And then Jerry, what was his last name? He did American Gigolo, and I really wanted to meet Richard Gere.
Jerry Moss?
Yeah. No, it wasn't Jerry Moss. It was the other Jerry. And it wasn't, what's his last name? It'll come to me. And so he said, Jody, we're going to be shooting in Westwood I was working for free in theater at the time. And so I was stage managing. So I was getting a little bit of knowing what gaffer's tape was and hit your mark and things like that. But that was it. So he said they were shooting in Westwood, and he goes, just bring a prop and you can meet Richard Gere. I go, great. I brought golf clubs and walked in with golf clubs. And Jerry's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, I didn't know what to bring. And, I met Richard Gere, and then it was like, hi, and that was it. So, no, I had never really been on a set. And then I left the hand prop room, not on very good terms at all. And the production designer that I did theater with, his name was Louis Massenet, and he did rock videos. And he said, he goes, do you want to come and work with me? And I said, great. And my first set, I had a 7 p.m. call in Sylmar at a junkyard it was this weird Playboy shoot with these magic glasses.
Yeah.
And we shot all night in a junkyard to some song. I don't remember the song, with this woman on this red blanket in a junkyard. And that was the romance of it. And it was really cool to be in a junkyard all night long and feel safe.
Did you come in doing a lot of music videos?
Totally.
Because that was mine.
Was it?
Yeah.
And music videos were brutal.
I was the late 80s, early 90s. I was in New York, and everything. I mean, I easily probably could have done 100 music videos. I was doing 2-3 a week, and the shortest day was 18 hours. And for our generation, that was such an in.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you had a heartbeat and you could stay awake for 24 hours straight, they would have you.
Oh, yeah. So I did a ton of music videos.
As prop?
Yeah. Well, everybody was everything.
Everybody, fair.
Yeah.
You're art directing and doing set dressing.
A lot of times it'd be a definite production designer.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, you could be everything from the person they send to go get lunch for the art department, to the prop master, to the weapons wrangler, to what have you.
Totally. So I did that, and then I also started Finders Keepers, and I sent out these flyers to every production company and every studio, because I had experience being a buyer at the hand prop room.
Yeah.
So I knew how to give really good phone. I could find things hard. I knew the ability to say, hey, I'm looking for this 7-foot high giraffe that is red and purple. Well, I haven't seen one. Do you know where maybe I could find
source?
one?
You were a source specialist.
Yes, and I was a major source specialist, and computers were kind of not all there, but getting there. And so my motto was I can find things at the most modern day computer.
Yeah.
And a guy from KTLA, his name was Billy Martin, called, and they were getting rid of their prop house there. So I came over with my Polaroid, and he said, well, how do you charge? And it was, well, I can either charge you a fee by the hour, or I can take pictures. You can tell me what you want for these items, and then I can mark them up or sell them however you want me to. And I thought, well, that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
And he called me 2 days later and said, I have a game show. Do you want to be the prop master? Okay.
Nice.
So I figured, like, what is it, like Jeopardy, like
Yeah.
a piece of chalk and a glass of water.
So at this point, you already knew what a prop was.
Yes, well, I had worked at the hand prop room for
Right,
6
so-
years,
yeah.
so I was familiar.
So you knew what the responsibilities were, even though you hadn't actually done it yourself.
Yes, I had also done so many rock videos and other things like that, and worked in theaters. So I felt relatively comfortable, and I was young, so I wasn't that young actually, because I must have
Say
been
yes.
30, 31.
Let them realize it was a mistake.
Yeah, like I could
Yeah.
do this. And my first prop kit was like, oh my God, I wish I still had it. It was like a rolling, like a suitcase with drawers in it.
Oh,
That was mine.
really?
Oh yeah. And I come in and I remember
It was made of like a fiberboard.
totally, it was fiberboard. And I came the first day, and this guy who was the key grip, his name was Luke. And and the show was called, it was some banking show. Look at me, like now I can forget. It was Break the Bank. And he goes, are you Jode? And I go, yeah. Oh, well, you're a woman. And I was like, yep.
Here
And
I
he
am.
goes,
Wow,
well,
they actually said that to you.
and it said, your refrigerator got here. Why don't you move it? And I was like, no problem. So mad. To this day, I've never seen a person move a refrigerator by themselves. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay. And it was my first little inkling that, okay, this is going to be a challenge. The show was also so hard. They had like 10 little vignettes, and we shot like 6 shows a day. So it was like 60 setups a day, and with balloon
Jeez.
drops. Oh my, it was insane. And the worst time was, and the guy, Richard Klein, I think was his name, and he was the executive producer and the director, and he kind of screamed a lot, but
Yeah,
we did
yeah.
well. And my crew was huge, but we had to do these balloon drops, and so I set my crew on the balloon drops, and we had a lot of other balloons working on the show, and somebody broke the bank, and they go, okay, drop the balloons, and I look up, and they had filled all the balloons with helium.
No.
And I look up, and I'm like, oh, this is so not good. And I am dying, and I hear, where's Jode? I'm like, and it was the first time that I really knew the magnitude of answering for our department
Yeah.
and having my department's back, because I didn't say, well, I go, we messed up,
Yeah.
and we did this wrong, and
Yeah.
and also having to have that ownership so early in my career, and such a big mistake.
And this was like the first real show.
Yeah,
and
first real show I did.
And what was your like not knowing many people in the prop world too? How did you put your team together on that?
They
something
gave me people.
They gave you people?
Literally, KTLA said, well, we have these people that kind of work on
Okay.
show to show. And I go, okay, great. I'll
Yeah.
take them.
Yeah.
And so from that, and then I ended up I was hired as the assistant prop master on Let's Make a Deal when they were bringing it back. It wasn't the first one. I'm not that old. But when they were bringing it back, and that also was a really hard show, because that Broyhill 7652 couch needed to be the exact Broyhill. And we had this huge, it was underneath a stage, this huge warehouse of stuff that we had to pull. And about 10 days into prep, the guy that was the prop master said he decided to take cats on the road. He was, a theater guy. And so they said, well, who's going to be the prop master? And Monty Hall was like, let's let that nice Jewish girl do it.
Yeah.
And that was me. And I slept at the studio
Really?
for weeks.
Yeah.
I threw up every day. Oh, I was petrified.
Yeah.
I was just petrified.
The pressure was just a lot.
And, and it was a big deal.
Yeah, of course.
And I, was not particularly qualified.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the story of a lot of it. And there's my gratitude, is people gave me a chance.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of women doing it.
Yeah.
And you kind of, as a prop master, have to learn on the job.
And with that all happening, I mean, at that point in time, did you know, like, I'm doing this the rest of my life? Like, I'm going to be prop mastering? Or
did you ever think it's time to go back to school?
I went back to school. Actually, it's funny you said that.
Just like, make it to Berkeley. You never made it to Berkeley.
No, I actually, that was the funny part is when I did go back to school, I wanted to, I wanted to go into psychology, and I thought I wanted to work with adolescent suicide. And so I went into a master's program at Antioch. And I could do it because I wasn't working that hard. And it was a program for working people.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to start the second year of the program. And I got called to do Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh.
And they were moving it to L.A.
And I had gotten called to PA on Pee-wee's Playhouse in New York.
Oh, you did?
And it moved to L.A.
So you know, what's this? Okay.
No, I never got a chance to work on it. They had called me, I guess, the summer before it started. It was shot on like Broadway and Houston Street in New York, and on like the 5th floor of these stages. And they had said, "Do you want a PA on it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." And then it ended up moving before I started. It moved from New York to L.A.
That's really funny. So it was this weird thing for me of like, okay, do I want to like, this was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down professionally.
Yeah.
And so I took it, and I did not complete school, and it was a great experience. It was an amazing experience. And shortly thereafter, and then I started doing a bunch of pilots.
And you had
non-union.
Had you made the decision in your head then at that point?
Yeah. I did. I wanted to stay with this and keep doing it. And then I did a bunch of pilots and a couple series, all non-union. And then finally, I got hired on Lassie as a lead man.
Oh.
And was I a lead? Yeah, I was a lead man, I think, and that's how I got in the union.
Oh, cool.
And then Paul Rubens had called to ask me to continue with Pee-wee's Playhouse, and I had to turn him down because it was non-union.
Wow.
So that was, it was kind of a funny thing, and then that was how I got in the union.
You did Pee-wee's Playhouse, the TV series, and then Christmas Pee-wee's Playhouse movie, right?
Yeah. The Christmas one is what I did, yeah.
Yeah?
It was great.
I was going to say, tell us a little bit about that, because there's a lot of very unique props in that, and especially being kind of a fresher prop master in that. What was that experience like for you?
Did you come in at the beginning of that, or was the show already?
No, it was. They brought it out here to do the Christmas special.
Okay.
And so I came in at the very beginning. The production designer was a guy named Jimmy Como, and he said, Paul's really tough on props and doesn't like prop masters. And I'm like,
really?
I've heard this a lot.
Oh.
And over my career, I'm sure you have, or that actors really hates prop. You hear it a lot.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, we all have. And so I was like, well, that's a great lead in.
Yeah.
And I was petrified. And so we started making all these things. We had all these meetings. I think I had a crew of like 15 people that were working on stuff, and we were making it, and we'd been talking about it. And Paul was supposed to come in to the studio that day, and this guy comes in, and he literally looks like Sal Mineo in like this leather jacket, and it's the summer, and it was hot out, and he goes, "Hi, I'm looking for Jody," and I go, I go, "It's really nice to meet you, but you can't stay. It's a closed set. I'm really sorry, but you can't stay. But are you Jody?" "Yes, but if you're looking to work for me, my crew is already booked. I'm really, really sorry, but you have to leave." And he asked like 4 times. And I kept just saying, "I'm sorry, but this is a closed set and you really can't stay." And he goes, "I'm Paul Rubens." I was just like,
oh no.
oh my God. I almost burst into tears.
Yeah.
And I go, "See? I'm really, really guarding the set." What was I going to say?
Yeah.
And
you passed the test.
Yes. And then, he was also we've all worked with those directors and actors that are kept somewhat sequestered.
Yeah.
And to do that early on in my career was nerve-wracking and beneficial.
Yeah.
Because there's certain times where it's like, I can't do this through 5 people.
Yeah.
I need a direct line of communication.
Yeah.
So I learned early on how to segue graciously and get to the source.
Yeah.
You know, where if Paul was on set or Paul was, you know, somewhere and I knew not a lot of people would be around, I'd say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about for the ant farm, you know. And then I think we were, I don't know. We shot it for a few months, and so it was well into it. And there was like something with an ant farm. And so we were in this constant meeting. Goes, Jode, you know, just come up with what you think. And that was a huge, huge moment for me of understanding that, okay, and now looking back on it, every show that I've worked on, there's a point where I know the shorthand has set in.
Yeah.
And I have to find my way to learn that shorthand, and then you'll know when it'll arrive.
Yeah.
So that then I can really feel freer creatively to run with it.
That's the most thing I'm stressed about when I start a show too, is just like, there's all these other, because you have to find that with every department, I feel like. Right?
Totally.
But so you didn't do a lot of shows where you were the assistant prop master. You pretty much, right from the beginning, you were figuring out your own way to do it. So right from the beginning, you knew exactly what would work for you. You didn't have to kind of go through other people's methods and find out that it wasn't right for you.
Right. I knew their methods in prep from working at the hand prop room.
Right.
And then after game shows, which I did a lot of them, I went into multicam. And I felt like multicam was a really good lead-in because it's also like theater, and I had worked in theater. So it's like you get the rehearsal days, and you get to see those daily run-throughs, and you get to see that full thing from beginning to end. And that was helpful. And I was assistant on one multicam, and then I became a prop master.
Right. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that, you know, in terms of assistants, because I've obviously had a lot of them, and most of my assistants have become prop masters, which just brings me joy.
Yeah.
And when, you know, when I was in Albuquerque this past year, I couldn't bring anyone from LA. And the people that I liked the best were the people that were the newest, because they learned my way. And my way isn't the best for everybody. It's the best for me.
What was the Albuquerque show?
Pulse.
Oh, okay.
It was the medical show. It was
Okay.
Pulse that just started airing a month ago. So
No, I've seen it.
yeah.
I've seen it. I do enjoy it. I started watching The Pit.
Right.
And right after I finished The Pit, then all of a sudden I discovered Pulse. I'm like, wow, it's another medical show. The trend is starting up again.
Yeah. And medical shows are really hard.
Oh, I could imagine.
You know, but in terms of crew, I was super fortunate in Albuquerque. My crew was great. You know. And then it was just, you know, but to your point, to all of our points, it's different directors, it's different producers, it's different executive producers, it's different costume departments, it's different set decorators.
Yeah.
Like I work with a set decorator who does not dress a fridge, who does not
Really?
That stuff kills me. When I've had the same thing, they come up and they go, I don't do this, I don't do that. And it's like, well, I'm not supposed to do that. And it's like, how could these other people always seem to have the luxury?
It's in the local 44 budget.
but-
Oh, wait,
but not
you're in
even-
New Mexico, though, right?
But no,
This is here.
This is here?
But it's
it's
not
in the
even-
local 44 budget guidelines.
No, but
Is
what
it
I was
really?
Yes, it is.
But what I was getting at is that so many other departments always seem it's okay to tell us what they don't do, but it never works the other way. Like I could never go up to a costume designer and say, I don't do sunglasses. I don't do this. I don't do wedding rings. I think
Yeah.
it's costume.
Yeah.
And have it be okay. But yet I've had so many people do the same thing, say, I don't do this, I don't do that. And then they're looking at me for me to supposed to somehow just jump in and say, oh, no, it's okay. We'll do it.
Yeah.
Which we usually do.
I've worked on a show, a whole TV series once where the set decorator didn't do a lived-in layer. Like every set was built to look like an IKEA setup or something. Like, it was polished. So me and the production designer and her were starting to not get along. So it was just easier for the production designer and me to show up an hour before call. And she would come onto my truck, and her and I would just go through and put some mail out and put some beer cans out, or just like a little bit of like personality into the set. And I mean, I feel like I'm closer to that production designer now, so I'm okay with it. But
it's always just an interesting balance, because I've had a decorator once, and I found this out the day of shooting, that she does not do telephones. And I come to set, and she just
like on a wall phone.
Yeah, it was a wall phone. It was actually a wall phone, and it was a rotary dial wall phone. And she goes, "What kind of phone do you have? I want to see the phone." And I look at her and I go, "Why would I have this phone?" And she gives me this look of disgust, like, "Well, they touch it," and then you feel like your shoulders slump, and you go, "Are we really going to go down that road?"
Yeah, it's hard, and it's hard.
But then you feel like the bad guy. All of a sudden, I
feel like you dropped the ball.
Right now,
Yes.
all of a sudden, I feel like I've dropped the ball because I don't have the phones, and she's getting annoyed at me for not having the phone. It was never discussed. It was just in her head. Maybe in the other shows she's done, she's always put it off on the prop master, and it's always worked. But no one ever thought of telling me this. And I hated that feeling. I really resented the fact that I felt like I had dropped the ball, and now I had made the mistake, and I'm trying to cover up something that I should have known, when I knew that none of this should be on me.
That's the problem. I've often referred to props as like the fibromyalgia, which is, it's like whatever anybody doesn't want to, or whatever anybody doesn't feel like doing, they'll just throw it on
We
us.
become the gray area whenever
And-
it serves them.
Yeah, and so trying to figure that out with different departments early on in a show, where you can't go to, I mean, you can, but it's like, do you do fridges? Like, it's just this weird thing, but then it's like, in a show I recently did, there was a couple times where they didn't really care about, we were shooting on location, and they didn't really care about the dishes or anything. And I'm like, okay, if you don't want to care about them, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do what I think the character looks like. And then they came and they asked if they could see the dishes. And I was like, you know what? You can see them on the... At that point, I didn't even say it, but what I wanted to say was, you can see it on the day.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't, because who wants to work in that kind of a vibe? And
I know.
I was like,
It's like,
But
what's the line you want to start?
then
with?
You don't
they
want to
came
be. You don't
to
want to
me-
be that person.
No, but then they came to me and they said there was $1,200 for glassware and stuff that I needed to get for a bar scene we were doing later. She said, do you want to take half of it? I go, well, do you want to take half of the dishes that I just bought for such and such set? Like, why don't we do it that way?
know.
Because, and I felt, but to your point, I felt pissy about it. I felt weird about it, but it's like, I didn't put this in my budget.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be over budget because of it. And I don't want to step on your toes, but I need to make sure that I'm covered.
See, I get that a lot. I'm sure both of you get that all the time with purses, where the costume designer will say, "What are you doing for purses?" And it's a very loaded question. It's like, well, I'm not. It's a fashion accessory. You're doing it. Or when the costume designer will come to me having bought thousands of dollars worth of sunglasses, wanting me to pick up the tab, but there's not a double in sight, and I have to go out and buy all the doubles for the single sunglasses they've bought. And it's like, it's a prop. I will handle it from the beginning. I will decide how much of my budget goes towards it, and we could work on this together. But don't go out and buy a single sunglass for me to have to then find out which store in the city of Los Angeles you purchased it.
Yeah, I try to nip all. I mean, I think we try to nip all these in the bud ahead of time, but I feel like there's a lot of carve out. There was a show I worked on where with the designer went through, it was because they basically found a trash piece of artwork, a framed piece of artwork they pick up, and I was like, okay, it's artwork. Production. She's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do the artwork. We're gonna do all that. I was like, for budgetary purposes, you're gonna do all the artwork, and then we'll grab it on the day, right? Yeah, okay, that's completely fine. And then a couple days before we go, and they're like, oh, the artwork's done, so we're gonna give it to you so you can get it stretched on a canvas and get it framed. It was
Right.
like, when you said you were gonna do the whole artwork, budgetary wise, that's why when I asked you in budgeting that this is what it's going to be. But now to get doubles and framing and stretching is like that's over $1,200. Like that's not a cheap thing to just add on a tier movie.
And you know, as much as you learn and as many years that you've spent doing this, it's amazing. You do start to find certain workarounds and certain ways to anticipate this and ways to avoid having this happen. And it could be years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it happens to you again.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, how in the world could I have become so blindsided by something like this?
Right. I mean, you know, there is that. And then the other side of it is just... I'm pretty transparent with when I do my budget.
Yeah.
And I'll be pretty transparent with a production manager if it's a team that I have not worked with before. I will actually go to the production manager and say, "This is the first time I'm working with this team. I'm going to pad my budget a little bit until we know, you know, what area, how gray or how much gray there is that I'm absorbing from other departments." And for the most part, production managers are really nice about it.
Well, it's all coming out of the same pool, and that's the thing. Like none of
Exactly.
even all these stories we're all talking about, none of us minds handling it if we have to handle it. It's just when it comes out of our budget pool, we're the ones that are going to get reprimanded for it. And so it's like
exactly.
yeah.
And using your route, I have gone through the production manager too. When I've worked with a costume designer who might want to spend all the money on sunglasses, I'll meet with the UPM and I'll tell them that, you know, so-and-so wants to do all of the sunglasses. My budget is not going to support it. But to keep peace in the family, I will take care of all of that. But when you're tabulating my budget, you need to understand that if I go $5,000 over, this is one of the reasons. Or we need to talk to the designer right now and settle this. And almost always the UPM will say, no, let's keep peace in the family. Let the designer think that you're paying for it all. I'll code it as it's needed.
Great.
But the thing is that it takes it takes a matter of getting all this done up front, because there are a lot of prop masters that don't want to rock the boat and are afraid to talk to the UPM and ignore it, and it only bites them in the butt later. The fact that you're using your experience and you realize, take care of it now while it's not an issue. Don't try to correct it after it's become an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, and that's part of the collaboration, and that's part of that spirit of, you know, I always wanted to make a short of a scene, like every department gets a scene, and then listen to each department talk to their team about what it is.
Yeah.
Because lighting would say, okay, well, it's night. Costumes would say it's day 3. We would say, well, it's where he's got the pen and the ice pick and, you know, whatever it is. But it is that collaborative effort. And that's the thing about propping that I do love is I think we are one of the departments that interacts with every single other department.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know,
Because
from
something that
AR
we do
coding with DPs.
License plates on cars.
Exactly. And that's the part of it that I really do love. And then when you are lucky enough to get a series that comes back, and then you get to work like on Weeds. I mean, it was like same time next year for 7 years, and it was a summer show. So it was just great. And it was pretty much the same crew since day one.
One of my favorite shows of all time.
That was a crazy show. That was a great show.
Absolutely love that show.
That
Genji
was-
Cohen struck gold with that.
Yes, that was like actually I think it was one of my very early shows that I was able to transition into single cam from multi-cam.
I was gonna say, yeah, because you haven't done much features, right? You've mostly sticking to. So you went in, and then that was one of your first shows that you actually transferred into like straight episodic.
I think the first one was Hidden Hills, which was, excuse me, around 2001, 2002. I remember my son was little, and then I think Weeds was pretty close to that. And
How did you get onto that then? They're like, let's take this multicam girl to do this crazy episodic with all of this. I mean, the props on that had to be pretty intense.
Yes,
Yes.
they were. It was a weird thing. I forgot the name of the production designer who did the pilot. She was a woman. Her usual person wasn't available. Somebody recommended me to her. and we got on really, really well. Like
Oh,
I've
wow.
never worked with her or seen her again. It was
Yeah.
like, and so she decided to hire me. And as it turned out, Genji's kids and my son went to the same preschool. So I knew
Really?
Genji tangentially, didn't even realize it was her show
Wow.
when I interviewed. And then there's a lot of like ways that where it, Genji and I connected. So and then Joe Lucky became the production designer on it, and I worked great with Joe, and so that was one of my first. I think it was early on in my single cam world.
Yeah.
And that was great. And it was, you watch we watched the kids grow up. Mary Louise was great.
Yeah.
It was a really hard show.
Yeah. So was it a shock in that way? Because you were saying you came from a world where you're doing a lot of rehearsal days and shorter days, and now I'm sure Weeds was like 12 plus hours some nights,
Yeah.
and like you guys were going all force ahead, huh?
Yes, but I do, and to this day, I find single camera, for me and what I do, easier for me to manage my time than multicam. Because multicam, you're on call.
Yeah.
Like they're rehearsing, you are on call all day. And it's like, I'm going to be going to, Costco. It's like, no, you're not. We need, a Jack Russell Terrier stuffed animal on set now to rehearse with before run
There's
through.
things that are being rewritten quicker and coming up with
in
new
real
ideas.
time.
Yeah.
Whereas in single cam, I feel like and I was also a single mom, so I feel like in single cam I can manage my workday easier because I can come and go.
Yeah.
And also I would put my son to bed and then go and do work for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So whereas in multicam, you need to be there all day.
Yeah.
It's interesting because all of us have kids. And then Mike, yours is certainly the youngest of all of ours. And when you were talking about your son,
Yeah.
that it's interesting because I see the same thing in my career. I look at movies as a point of how old my son was at the time.
Yeah.
So if you looked, through or if we looked through your IMDb page and we asked you what year did you do a particular job, you wouldn't remember it by the year. You would think, how old was my son when he came to visit the set on that show? And that's how you would remember it. And you could see your kid growing up.
Exactly.
And you'll see that more and more.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, now that we can have set visits again. So
Well, but it's also as your son starts to take an active interest in what you do.
Yeah.
And he starts visiting set, like you said, you'll start to think, wow, when I did such and such, he was 7, he was 8, he was 9.
Yeah. Yeah, you do sort of earmark it by that. That's interesting, and I do think about the compromises that we make and the hours that we do in terms of our kids. And because we're not 9-to-5ers.
But it's my son now, he's working in film on his own.
Oh, he is?
He's 28, and we talk about it at length. And he says he never felt different than the other kids because the weekends were always his. And I was not a single dad, but on the weekend we would make sure to go to movies together. We'd do things. When I wasn't working, it was almost exclusively with him. So we figured out that over the course of a year, I probably spent more time with him than a lot of the 9-to-5 normal job dads did. But it was always normal to him. He knew that on a Saturday morning, he had to be extra quiet around the house because I probably didn't get to bed until 6.
Good old Fraturdays.
Right, but that's all. But that was all part of his life. He also knew all through elementary school that no one was going to have better arts and crafts projects than the kid who got to go to a 48-foot prop trailer and build it with his dad.
That's fair.
That's true. That's very, very true.
Yeah. Did you do all of Weeds?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
The pilot to the end.
So that's
great.
like 8 years or something
Yeah.
like that?
Which was great.
Yeah.
That was a great experience.
Did you do anything in between, or did you just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was a summer show.
Oh, yeah?
So I think may have been during some of the Larry Sanders years.
Oh, wow.
Does it scare you? Because I just got together with some people from a long-running show that I did. Does it amaze you that for a show that you were on for such a long time, how quickly it becomes so far away in the past?
Yeah.
It almost it doesn't seem real sometimes when I look at shows that were such a real part of my life, and now I'm looking back on it and it's 10 years in the rearview mirror, and I don't know how that happened. And you look at a show like Weeds. How long were you on that? For
7-8 years.
7-8
something
years.
Like that.
2005 to
Oh,
20.
those my credits? Up
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
And now-
2005
that's
to
really funny.
2012.
But now Weeds is 13 years in the past.
Yeah.
And you think, wait a minute, 13 minus the age I am now, was I actually that age?
Yeah, I know. That's kind of great. Whoa. Is that my IMDb page?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know I've never put anything on there?
Oh, yeah, it's all been added by shows.
Yeah, I guess. That's interesting. Yeah, it is weird. I did, during COVID, there was a podcast, like some news radio people wanted to do a podcast. They were big followers of news radio. And I said, okay. And, do I have to prepare for anything? And they go, no. They were asking me questions like, what about the Titanic episode? And I was like, that was years ago.
Yeah.
And it lets you feel like when you see actors who have very iconic shows, when you see them interviewing William Shatner about a Star Trek episode from 50 years ago, people have seen these episodes over and over again, so they're always fresh in their mind. And I have certain iconic things I've done over the course of my career that I just don't think about on a day-to-day basis. So when I'm on set and PAs are like, you worked on the first Ninja Turtles movie? I have certain memories of the show.
Yeah.
But then they start asking me these questions, and it's like, I haven't given that a thought. You might have seen the movie 100 times in the last 10 years. I haven't thought of it in the last 40.
Right. Well, it's also, there's I have certain memories from every show. Like,
so do
I have
I.
a really funny memory from Weeds.
Yeah, please.
Which was, I don't remember which seasons it was. Well, as to your point, I think my son was around 5, he was about 5 or 6, 5. And we needed some of those small turtles, like the illegal turtles that you can't get. And so I said, well, okay, I'll go down to
Santee Alley.
And so I took Lucas, my son, my friend Jyoti came with her daughter Cyan, and I thought, well, I'll get each of them 2 turtles, and we'll have the turtles for the show. And, we're walking around the alley, and it's like, ¿Dónde están los tortugas? And nobody will answer. And I'm like, oh, God. And somebody offered me, parrots, and it was funny. And then finally I was at the corner of, Broadway and 9th or something.
Yeah.
And a guy selling 30 pairs of contact lenses for $5. And I go, do you know where I can find some turtles? And he goes, wait right here. So now I'm doing this weird turtle deal downtown LA with kids. So I say to my friend, take the kids to McDonald's. I got to take them somewhere.
Yeah.
So we leave.
I got to go down an alley to get some turtles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So black market turtles. So we leave with these turtles, and
The little plastic
the
aquarium
little
with the
plastic
palm tree.
aquarium with the palm tree, with the boxes, they each had 2 turtles, and Lucas named his milkshake and cream puff. And so we shoot it, fine. We go on our break for the year, and we come back, and in the interim, I had cancer, and I was going through chemotherapy between that season and the following season.
No.
So I was in the middle of going through chemotherapy. Now, Milkshake was getting really big, and Cream Puff was about the same size. And I remember I was going through, I'll never forget this, and I was making dinner, and somebody had taken Lucas to his soccer practice, and I go, and Milkshake was like definitely dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God. So I had promoed Fossil watches, and I had this Fossil watch box. So I take the turtle, I put him in this watch box. I take an Arrowhead bottle, I put some flowers in it. Lucas comes back from practice. I go, honey, I'm really sorry, but Milkshake passed away. We need to just go bury him in the front yard.
Yeah.
And so we go and we say some lovely things. I literally had a kitchen spoon, buried him in the front yard.
Yeah.
And then thought I'll dig him up and, dispose of him properly. And I was going through chemo, so I had a little bit of chemo brain.
Yeah.
Completely forgot to dig the thing up. A month later, Lucas calls me and he goes, Mom, I was working on something, I don't know what. Mom, it's alive. Adi said it would be alive. Christina said it would be alive. It's alive. I go, honey, what are you talking about? He goes, milkshake. He's alive. And he hangs up.
What?
I call the babysitter and I go, Christina, did Lucas dig up the dead turtle? She goes, yep. And he's very much alive.
How long? Wait, how long has a turtle been in the ground?
Like good, almost a month.
A month with no light, food, or water in a box?
No. And I go, what did you do with it? I go, how does it look? She goes, it actually looks better than the other one. So she threw it back into the tank. So, and that turtle lived for like a good 2 more years.
What?
I could never look that turtle in the eye. Like, hey, milkshake. So we go back to shooting weeds. The first episode was a continuation, and they wanted the turtles.
They wanted the turtles back?
So Craig Zisk was the director. I go, I just have to tell you guys the best story. And so I tell him what happened. And he goes, we're just going to call the turtle Jesus because that's a miracle.
I was just going to say,
okay.
are sick people touching the turtle to
Exactly.
get better?
Yeah.
So the Humane Society has to come, right? Because we're using... So they come and I go, in the interest of full disclosure, I need to tell you it's our pet turtle. And he said, well, just from talking to you, I'm sure the turtle's been very well taken care of.
Yeah.
And I calmly said, if Jesus could talk. I mean, it was just like...
That's wild.
So that was one of my favorite stories from Weeds.
Yeah, that's crazy. I do want to get a little bit more into Weeds just in the scope of what the show is, because have you ever... I mean, I'm assuming in multicam, there wasn't a lot of heavy drug shows that you were doing.
Not a lot. And Weeds was real. I mean, keeping in mind, like, what year was Weeds? It was 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, when did weed become legal?
In California? I don't
19?
Yeah, not till after, like, I think they had the medical shops, and I think that was a big part of the show.
So
but
when we were starting Weeds, you're right, they had the medical marijuana stores.
Right.
And they were just opening in LA.
Yeah.
And production wanted me to get a medical marijuana card.
Really?
And I wouldn't because I wasn't a fan of the government at the time.
Yeah.
It was a Republican government, and I didn't want Big Brother watching over me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it. But we got to go into 2 medical marijuana stores, and 3 of them. One was like, it was on Santa Monica Boulevard. It felt like a Zen garden, and it was pristine and lovely, and the counter. I mean, then it was bizarre, right? Because they were just starting. And the guys that worked there like used to be, bouncers at the Viper Room.
Right,
I mean,
right, yeah.
And they were super knowledgeable. And then you go across the street to the other one, which is behind like the screen door with the iron on it.
Yeah.
And the broken TV.
Yeah.
And
plywood against the walls and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it was wild. And we went to them periodically for research, and they were all super, super nice.
Yeah.
But in terms of, and this was also a story about a single mom dealing weed in Santa Clarita.
In Santa Clarita, yeah.
And so it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
Yeah.
And then also just another funny, you had to have people smoking, right?
Yeah, Kevin Nealon smoking every single
Kevin
time we see
Nealon,
him.
and so Snoop Dogg was on,
Right.
and
in the recording studio, the
in
milk
the
weed.
recording studio with the milkweed, and who doesn't want to meet Snoop Dogg?
Yeah,
so
of
I'm
course.
there for first team rehearsal.
And he ain't smoking the fake stuff, huh?
Well, so at first they had said Snoop Dogg wants to come in with a live bottle of champagne, and I'm like, no, he doesn't. He wants champagne for his trailer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you, this
Yeah.
is what he wants. He wants 2 bottles of champagne. And on multicam, they did the same thing,
Yeah.
Wants 2 bottles of champagne, a dozen champagne glasses. He wants it to be iced down. He wants it in his trailer. I go, and you don't want me to give him a live bottle because then Mary Louise can ask for one, and Kevin. And then you're going to get into a situation where there's way too much liability for me.
Sure.
So they said, okay, fine. So... And, I'm sure you guys have been through this when people are smoking on set. And what do? Okay, this is what we're going to be using. It's honey rose. Do you know how to smoke out of a bong? My guys will show you. So Hardy Gates was Hardy and Johnny France were my assistants, and
Oh, I love Hardy.
they're both great,
And John.
They're both prop masters.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But Hardy said to me, "You're not going to make me." I go, "You have to. You have to do the drill with Snoop. Like that's our responsibility." So I leave, and of course Hardy has Johnny do it. So sorry. So Johnny, I come back to the studio, and it just reeks of pot.
Yeah, of course.
And I get on radar. I'm like, Johnny, Hardy. And Johnny's like this. He goes, so I did the whole thing with Snoop. I said, this is what we have. This is what you're going to use.
Yeah.
And I'm quoting Snoop, so I'm not being disrespectful. And Snoop looks at Johnny, who, as we know, is the nicest human. He
Right.
goes, you're not going to make smoke that shit. And Craig Zisk was standing there. And Johnny goes, here's what I'm going to do. Every take, I'm going to take the pipe. I'm going to reset it there with the lighter, and I'm going to walk away. Snoop took a hit every take for 7 hours. The crew was high. Everybody was... I want to go back and watch that episode just to see. I mean, it took forever.
In a tight studio, too, right?
In a real sound studio.
Yeah.
And that's how...
And there was never any repercussions from that. I did the first season of Mad Men, and I think towards the end of the first season, somebody had called OSHA because they were so much cigarette smoking. And we used nothing but herbal cigarettes. We never used tobacco cigarettes. But some crew members didn't like the fact that when you would go on set, you were still breathing in a carcinogen, even if it wasn't tobacco. And someone had turned us in, and I remember it made TV Guide or Variety or something.
Really?
So
Yeah.
what did you end up doing?
We basically, I think they told crew members that if it bothers them, they could walk off set. I don't know if they put better ventilation on the set, but I mean, the smoking never changed. I mean, through the whole run of the show, it was practically a character upon itself.
Yeah.
Right.
The show I just did was all, I mean, it was like the female version of Pineapple Express. We went we went through over 300 joints in the entire movie.
And I understand
there
there was a great bong in that show, too.
Oh yeah, it's
Was there?
it's gonna be a MacGuffin submission, not this year, but probably next year. But yeah, I built a pretty cool bong.
Oh,
but
nice.
but anyways, that new weed at ISS is the stuff that we used a lot of the times, and the actors seem to like it. But the hard thing to distinguish is like it's real weed, but with like the CBD and THC kind of just pulled out of it.
It ultimately becomes a prop master responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, I did Queen of the South, and it was nothing but cocaine. And if I had an actor say, well, I want to only snort real cocaine, there's just no world where I was going to provide real cocaine for them.
No, but you don't know if they go to the bathroom and they snort real cocaine.
Well, right. What they do on their own is on them.
Yeah.
But you do have to always be careful, and that's always a consideration, probably now more so than in 2005, that if you're allowing an actor knowingly to be using pot on set, at some point you could have to answer for it.
Exactly. And I just wouldn't. And, I'm really strict about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember on Larry Sanders one time, Rip Torn, he had a liquor bottle. And he walked in with his own liquor bottle. And I went to the director. And I go, and the AD, I go, you guys can take it from him. And I said, if you don't, I'm out. Like, I am not responsible for this episode. You can shoot this episode with him doing that. Great. And I'll come back next episode and I'll replace myself. Like, I just won't do it.
Yeah. I don't want to be responsible for that.
And, the thing is, in the world that we live in now, calling it, if you will, a post-Rust world, no one is going to back you up. If there is an accident on set because one actor tripped down a flight of stairs and knocked another actor down at the same time, and you found out that other actor had been smoking pot all the time or had been drinking, they're going to say, well, who supplied it to him or who allowed it to happen or knew that it happened? And when it's you, no one's going to stand behind you.
I actually didn't think about it that way. Since Rust...
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a post-Rust world.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't renew my firearms permit because of Rust.
Really?
Yeah. If there are guns or weapons on it, if I'm hired on a show, it's pretty much the first thing I say. If you have guns or weapons, I want you to know I no longer, and I had my firearms permit forever. I no longer have a firearms permit because I'm not comfortable being responsible for any weapons. I know really good armorers.
Yeah.
But I want you to know I cannot even transport a gun.
Yeah.
And I'm just really upfront about it and really clear about it because I'm too uncomfortable. I'm not a gun person in general. And so it would just, I always had an armor anyway, but now.
But see, you should always do what you're the most comfortable.
Definitely.
And it gets back to what we were talking about earlier, where
Yeah.
I like to tinker and you do something different. We all have our different skills.
Right.
And it's also important that we know what our abilities are and Rust certainly sees that out. If you are not comfortable with weapons, just because a producer is telling you to do weapons doesn't mean you should. And the same thing goes with food. If you are not trained at making, scrambled eggs in the morning, you bring in a food stylist for it.
Right. Right.
I think our main job, and I learned this from Emily Ferry years ago, Emily prides herself in knowing who to hire to do things perfectly. And to me, at the end of the day, that's just as important because Emily is still doing it. It doesn't matter if she's doing it through someone else's hands.
Totally. Well, there's also that having done it for so long, there are people that, like when I did The Dropout,
Yeah.
I knew that Lonnie Goodman would do all of the machines perfectly. Mm-hmm. And so making all of the machines and the cards and the needles and all of that, and I knew that I could work with him really closely on it. And it was great. And had I not been able to do that, like had they say you have to have such and such, I've never had that happen, but oftentimes I know producers will have their favorites and they'll say, go work with them. And knock on wood for me, nobody's ever told me where to have a prop made.
Yeah.
And it would be hard for me if I had to figure that out because we've all built relationships.
Right. And the relationships are more than just people we feel comfortable with. My relationships are people who I know when they say they will have it to me at Tuesday afternoon by 2:35, I'm not going to get the call at 2:34 saying other things have come up. Can we get it to you tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is especially why when I submit an invoice, sometimes I'll get a UPM go, well, there's this little prop house. The guy makes it himself in his garage, and he's going to do it for a third the price. And I said, I'm not just paying for the actual piece. I'm paying for peace of mind. And,
Yeah.
That's a really good way of putting it.
and that's a lot. And, when I go out of town, a lot of times if I want to have SAT build it for me, I'm doing it for that reason. Even though there might be some local business in town that might be able to fabricate it and build it for me, I know they're not a film company. And I stand that risk of them giving me a call saying, we've lost 3 people this week because of the flu and I can't turn it around, but can we get it to you next week? I'm like, next week? Next week is going to be a week too late and I won't ever need to see it again.
Right. But there is that shorthand in relationships.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Like ISS, with Hand Prop Room,
With Lonnie too, just like getting the texts, like being able to text somebody is so important. Like just a quick shorthand with that stuff, like that's a huge thing when you can have that level of relationship with people too. Get things done quicker. Yeah.
And even when you pass on a relationship, if you ever called me and asked who could do such and such,
Yes.
and I gave you that name, I'm giving you that name with no fear at all that you're going to call me back and go, Scott, who is this person that you stuck me with?
Yeah.
Because then that becomes my failure. Even if I'm not on the job, the idea of you giving me that look of like, Scott, you let me down.
Right. There's that culpability and responsibility.
Like I know if I asked you for something, even though you and I don't have any past together, there's a certain honor amongst thieves. And if I found out that you had worked with somebody and I called you and you recommended them to me, that's all I need to hear.
Absolutely. That there's that honesty and totally.
It is, and I've said this this always seems to come to this point with every time you've brought me in. One of the things I love about the PMG is it's brought us together on a level that never existed really prior to it. And I found myself really feeling like a part of something with the PMG, and not just because of the PMG, but also with social media and just I find that I know more prop masters now, and I find more prop masters know who I am.
Well, there's more
over the last several years.
We're comrades instead of competitors.
Yeah.
Right.
Because inherently, we're all competing for the same jobs. And when there used to be a pilot season, and when I started, man, I would weasel my, I would weasel my way into every studio lot.
Yeah.
To drop off my resume.
Yeah.
They would say, do you want to fax it in? You know what? I'm going to be at this studio today anyways.
Yeah,
Can I
let me
just drop
walk
it
in.
off?
Yeah.
And then I would have to like sort of convince like the guards at Warner Brothers, please.
Yeah.
I'm having to
you
do
can
that
take my
now for the
dog.
first time in so many years.
Sneak on lots?
Well, not just sneak on lots. I haven't had to hand in resumes or send out those emails in a generation now. And now, as things have just slowed down and there's just no work, I'm finding myself having to call production designers and UPMs and just reminding them that I'm alive. And it's a weird slap in the face having to do that again. I felt like I was past that point in my career.
I don't think we ever get past it. I never have. I've always made the calls and always sort of tried to be proactive.
I just had such a long run of job to job to job with either referrals or working with the same group of people.
Right. And also post 2020, like post strike, this time it's different.
Oh, very much so.
I mean, I don't think that any of us feel secure in knowing what's going to go on in this industry. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky lately, and I'm hoping it stays that way. I think the level of camaraderie also with a lot of the friends, it's bittersweet in a little bit of way because now we know a lot more people that are suffering anymore at this time, and I want everybody to be working like really bad.
But it also, you are in a place I was years ago, and I haven't worked now for a while, but I learned my lesson when I was first starting.
Yeah.
And I saw other people who hadn't worked for a while and how miserable they were.
Yeah.
And pretty much even from my music video PA days, I made sure to have a savings account. So, because I realized I was working in an industry where this kind of stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you get one thing out of this, it's to learn that, where you are now is not going to be where you are 20 years from now. And make sure, because as bad as it is now, it could be twice as bad 20 years from now for you.
Yeah. I do want to talk about, before we finish off, the MacGuffin awarded show that you got it on, and that's Lessons in Chemistry,
Right.
Which is, I mean, it's a period kind of piece. Had you done a period show before this?
I had dabbled in some period episodes. In Transparent, we did a lot of period stuff in Nazi Germany and
Oh, cool.
and other things, but I had never done a full period show from soup to nuts, and it was extraordinary.
Yeah.
It was so invigorating and so much fun and so fascinating.
Yeah, because as a prop master, the whole research outlook on things change. You're not as much, you're going through the whole period and watching.
Yeah, and you also, on other shows, if a writer writes something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I can't say that. But on this, it's like, you want that Swanson TV dinner in, I think it was 1952 or something. No, it didn't come out till 54.
Right.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
There was the prototype. So it was the research part of it was fantastic. My team was amazing. And then our joke was, I mean, and knock on wood, we did great, but our joke was if an eraser on a pencil wasn't exactly correct, they'd be like, is it? And I would say, my research says, but then Google sometimes lies, and I want to cross-reference this. And then we would just laugh because we thought about the dog that they got. And it's like, who had a golden doodle in that time period?
Right. But
down to animals.
Did. Yeah. But they did. They came about in 1948. But that was our joke when we were vexing over minutia about an eraser on a pencil.
It's the hardest thing about doing period work. There's the obvious things like trying to get cars right and get costuming right and things like that. The broad strokes are always there. But decades start to fold into one.
Yes.
And you think something that existed in 1957 and is so iconic with the 50s was just there from, January 1 of 1950. And that's not the case. And that's the kudos. That's why there's a MacGuffin on your shelf.
The specificity of it. And we really embraced that. And then also the specificity with science.
Yeah, it's a lot of elements.
We had this great science guy that was in Oregon, And he was just this character, but he was wonderful and really informative. And we would find equipment on eBay, and I think we found stuff like in flea market. I mean, we really researched it to death.
Yeah.
And then there was also like the conflict of food, which is, food in the 50s, like nobody was eating kale. It was a
Right.
garnish. Yet you had foodies on our show, like our executive producers, who wanted it to look fabulous. And
Yeah.
it's like fabulous in the 50s was different. So how do we make you happy and be authentically correct?
I had
Right.
to hire a food tech advisor once, not a
Stylist.
stylist, but somebody who was able to research for me what food would be at a fine hotel restaurant in the 1890s, and things like they wouldn't be eating in the winter,
Right.
And it's a winter scene, so there are no salads. People they wouldn't really have soup because soup was a poor man's food. So
Interesting.
there's just so many things. It's a lot of meat and potatoes, a lot of salted foods, and it's when people ask you how did you win a MacGuffin, well, because it's a period show, and it was correct to the period.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's correct. I think that, period shows are awesome, and they're also daunting because you can't like do a first team rehearsal and say, you know what, I'd rather use, I'd rather use a notebook than a clipboard. That sounds dumb, but I'd rather use something else because no, I can't run to Target. I can't get it. It
Right.
may not be in my kit
Yeah.
because my kit covers some spans, but certainly not the 50s.
Did you try to build a 1950s prop kit when you did it? So that to a certain, I mean, you can't have as well equipped prop kit 1950s as you do 2025. But do you go out trying to think, okay, I want to have a certain amount of clipboards and notebooks, like the essentials, so that I do have something to pull from last minute, more so than just like watches and sunglasses?
I mean, we did do a lot of that in buying stuff, and when we found stuff, we bought extra just to make sure we could accommodate that. And I have to say, considering it went through a few different executive producers and whatnot, they were pretty respectful, like super respectful of what it took, when they would make changes.
How about defending props? When I did Mad Men, I would have people come up to me going, they didn't have ballpoint pens then. They didn't have this. And at some point, I wanted to make a T-shirt that said it's 1960, not 1860. So as much as people were rushing things, like you said with the TV dinner, there would probably be things that did exist in the 50s that people just can't fathom that they existed that long ago. Did you find yourself like bringing things to set and people saying to you, well, they didn't have that yet?
Nobody really challenged us on that stuff.
I mean, a lot of times it's crew members.
Yeah.
Will say, well, did they wouldn't have had that in 1951.
I mean, a good friend of mine called me. He goes, that legal pad with that brown binding on the top. I go, yeah, dude, we made them because it was right. So you just hush.
Right, exactly.
But, when people do, I feel like that's the collaborative part. And I feel like there were enough eyes on everything that we were doing and enough show and tells. Like I just finished a show where there's not a show and tell.
Yeah. Man, they're becoming harder, I feel like, or they just don't have the time for them, and some directors just don't care about it.
Yeah, and that's where that first experience with Pee-wee of learning how to like weave my way in, where the show I just finished, I would go find the director or the upcoming director.
Yeah.
And, can I just show you these things, on the fly, and just kind of, I don't need to have a formal meeting, but if I can have 10 3-minute
that's the way
peekaboos,
Yeah.
then we're good. And I'm going to make sure that I get those. You, as an AD or a producer, don't have to schedule them for me because I'm too anxious not to have somebody have eyes on my stuff.
I do so many at Video Village show and tells.
A lot.
Because there are certain things that I will bring to set because I know they need to see it, because they do not have it in their head what to expect, and I do not want to be caught on set bringing something that they said all along, don't worry, Scott, we trust you, and then the moment they see what it really is, it's like, this isn't what I imagined in my head.
Right.
So if I have to just put it between them, between setups, that's what I'm going to do.
Also, I think that's the skill set that we get. That's the advantage and the nerve-wracking one from always working on different shows with different people in different genres, not knowing what we're doing, is figuring out those directors and those showrunners that can't get out of their head. That like, I just worked with someone who literally can't arrive until we are there.
Yeah.
And so how to navigate that and know, okay, I've just, that shorthand of knowing the realm of options to bring without a producer climbing on me about budget.
Right.
And it's all skills that we really hone in over the years.
Just by doing it.
And it is a big difference maybe between a young prop master and an older prop master. There is a certain wisdom that we just...
Well, I think there's also a certain different vulnerability and a certain different, it's a confidence thing. Like, 10 or 15 years ago, if I would have worked with the person I just worked with, and knock on wood, I didn't get one note the entire season, which is amazing.
Right.
Because that means I did what I was supposed to do.
You did your job.
I think 10 or 15 years ago, my feelings would have been really hurt.
Yeah.
Because I wanted more accolades and I wanted to know and I needed more reassurance.
But now you have a MacGuffin. You have
Yeah.
We were going to put on our prop card after we got it, we were going to put a picture of the MacGuffin and we were just going to say, ask me about my MacGuffin.
That's amazing.
One of my favorite quotes from a line producer I worked with, she'll always say, I have 101 things to worry about. You're not one of them.
That's great.
And then I feel comfortable. I love hearing stuff like that.
Yeah. But, and I think, and to this day, I still throw up the first day of shooting, no matter what show we're on.
Yeah.
I don't sleep the night before.
Me neither.
And I throw up.
Yeah. I don't throw up, but I think I've told you about it. It's like, anybody else got that crippling anxiety the minute? Yeah. But I was like, it doesn't matter how big or small the show is. It could be the smallest little show ever. And I'm still
it's just the first day.
Yeah.
And there could be not a prop working.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just you don't know how how this on-set style is going to go, how these people are going to react with each other, how the scheduling is going to happen.
So much of what we do is unveiled the day of shooting.
The day of shooting.
There's never a time where a director or producer, showrunner is going to walk on set having never seen it before. Costumes clearly are shown over and over and over again. Scripts have been written over and over and over again. But then all of a sudden on the day, they don't like the way the scrambled eggs look.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're too fluffy. They're too dry. Mm-hmm. There's too many of them. There's not enough of them. How come there's no toast?
Right.
And all of these things that you find yourself running back and forth to your truck, getting exhausted, feeling your heart pounding, and you're starting to think to yourself, all this is happening because I didn't provide somebody with a piece of toast. My whole career is going to go down the toilet now
because of toast.
Because of toast.
That's actually the thing that I don't think ever goes away. That the minute you make a mistake, which it's not really a mistake because you're going to correct it. Like, they're going to have the right eggs and toast to shoot. But you think, okay, this piece of toast is the one that's going to take me down.
Right.
This is the end. Well,
I always have the joke to myself, this is the job that people are going to realize I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because
I've been exposed.
Well, because I find myself on these shows, and it's probably what keeps us all sharp, but I find myself on these shows that I think, how in the world did I get here? Look at the talent that I'm surrounded by. People are looking to me for answers. And I never think to myself, well, obviously everything I've done leading up to this point is what put me here now. It just feels like this is going to be the job where they realize that somehow this was all a big mistake and I got rushed to this set and now everyone's going to realize, what is he doing here?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably a good trait. Or maybe I'm lying to myself.
I think to your point, I think it keeps us on our toes.
Sure.
And I think that the anxiety and nervousness, for me, it makes me do a better job.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
instead of my fear being crippling and, oh, what if they don't like it or blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I really hope that I'm getting this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have enough options. And in my options, there's the one I know that they wrote that they want,
Right.
if I can find
Well,
it.
yeah, it was
then there's the one that I like.
Exactly.
And then there's the one that I kind of like more. And there's the one that they need to hate.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
got to have the one that, well, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's my my mentor Paula has always told me about the cripple, because I've asked her, it's like, you always have this anxiety, like before we started, and she had told me like the really good thing. She goes, yes, you are supposed to have that, and if you don't, there's a problem, because it means you just don't care enough.
Right. Well, it's like,
And
it's
I think that's the thing.
It's actors always saying that they're always nervous before they walk on stage, and that if you're not nervous before you work on stage, you've been doing this too long and you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for props, as compared to other departments, we have to follow through with the care. Like,
Yeah.
we can't stop caring once we know
No.
we've prepped it right.
No.
You know,
yeah.
like, we can prep it as well as we can
Yeah.
and think, oh my God, we're dialed in, this is perfect, until they actually
yeah,
have it on
something
camera.
come up from anywhere, no matter how well polished you got this prop.
And those are the
Something else
days-
can come up.
Yeah.
And those are the days you think, on the next show, I just want to be a van driver.
Fortunately, I've never, ever felt that.
No,
I've
neither have
never, ever
No,
wanted
I
to
love this
be
job.
any other department than mine.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
No.
And that goes from not just on a film set, but from the time I went to college.
Oh, really?
The same thing. I've always wanted to work in film. I didn't know exactly what. So unlike you, I didn't stumble in it, but I didn't have anybody in my family doing it. I kind of pursued it. But I do remember being in college, having actual anxiety attacks, thinking, I can't work in an office. I just can't do the same thing every day. So that action figure thing I talked about earlier, I love that. I love the fact that I could go from being a spy on one show to a mom of 6 kids on the next show. I
Right.
love that aspect. It's the thing that really keeps me wanting to do this.
Right. And then you just keep learning different things.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
the best part about it.
ton of useless information
Yeah.
that
But it's-
fascinates us.
Yeah.
you know what?
Definitely.
I don't think so. I mean, when I look at the fact that you did Pulse, which to me is just, I love the show. It everything about it is phenomenal, but I also appreciate the amount of work that I know you had to do in it. That you can't fake that, even if you are an inexperienced prop master. If you pull that off, kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Pulse
there
was-
is no faking that kind of show.
No, Pulse was daunting.
Anything that's big medical, big military, big specialized, lots of food, you have to be on the top of your game.
Yeah, and it was also challenging shooting Pulse in Albuquerque for Miami.
Right.
You know, even with food items.
See, that's interesting because it looks so Miami. I mean, the first 2 episodes are all about the tornado that's coming through.
Right.
And it never dawned. I didn't look on the IMDb page to see where it was filmed.
Yeah, we
I
shot
actually-
it in Albuquerque,
Funny because I actually assumed it was
Miami.
just because it seemed like such an odd location not to film there.
Right. We shot like 2 separate weeks in Miami. I went the second time. The first time I didn't. I prepped it and sent it. And then I said to the producers on a medical it's too hard for me to prep it, relay it, and send it. Let me prep it, take it. I'll stay 2 days and then I can leave. Like, it just made it easier with all the medical stuff.
So for all the medical stuff, did you keep a shopper in LA, somebody who you can call?
I worked a lot with Alpha.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had purchased the line producer had purchased all the stuff from The Resident, and it came in these massive boxes and pallets, and it took us 6 weeks just to go through it. But fortunately, I mean, all the organs that I would have had to build and a lot of that stuff I got. So when we started, I started way ahead of the game, and and I knew what I would need. Like at least I had that much familiarity.
What was your overlap or your work experience with special effects makeup on that?
We worked really closely together.
Because
Yeah.
it's the one thing I noticed when I first started. Have you seen The Pit?
No.
Phenomenal show also. But the one thing I noticed in The Pit and then in Pulse is it's definitely a new world as far as the amount of incisions that you see and the amount of, I don't want to call it gore because it's not a horror movie, but I mean you
blood and the
Yeah.
guts.
yeah,
and the,
you see things that back in Chicago Hope ER era you saw blood, but you did not see
Incisions.
Yeah.
to that degree. I mean, it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's just it makes your toes curl when you see the scalpel. So how much of that did you have to provide the body?
We provided a lot of the cavities and a lot of the bodies, and then we also had special effects makeup who were here in LA, and they had a representative that would come in and out. And I would say that provided more challenges, instead of having them there full time, because then that it put me in that odd position of being a conduit.
Yeah.
But I wasn't privy to all the email. It was sort of that,
Yeah.
and then, but working with effects, we had an amazing med tech on the show.
And they were there full time.
They were there full time. She was great, Rosa. She was phenomenal. And we also had a writer, a medical advisor writer, Josh Troke, who was amazing and who would really, everybody was really accessible.
Yeah.
So if I had a question and I didn't really understand a procedure, I could go to them and say, Rosa, can you just talk me through this? I think or in terms of that defib, what, do I need it? So they really, and it's also, that's part of being older and being experienced is knowing that you can ask the question.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not stupid. I am a prop master. I care. And I need to ask this question so that I can embody being a doctor.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things to take pride in as a prop master is to know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
No one is expecting you to be a med tech, but they do expect you to know what questions to ask of the med tech.
Yeah. Right. And so that was the experience of the medical show was great because there is the codependency on those other departments. It's not collaboration, it is codependence.
Well, you have to know exactly where your job begins and ends and where special effects makeup begins and ends because that little gap is a big gap sometimes.
It's a big gap, and it kind of didn't end. Like, I don't think, I think that our job just doesn't end in that situation, and the same with especially in the medical world. It's because it's kind of my nephew was watching the show and he goes, I didn't see a lot of props. And I was like, every single thing in that camera is a prop, from the monitors, from that.
To how much they're wearing. I mean, it's all the doctors and stuff like that.
See, now, to me, the ultimate practical joke, if you go back and do season 2, when they open up a body cavity, I'm going to make sure somebody has a little turtle come walking out of the cavity.
It's our Easter egg.
Will you be submitting this for MacGuffin?
I guess I should.
I think you should, definitely.
See, again, I'm not because it did air in time.
Yeah, the windows open a lot. The windows open a lot. I think it goes right up to May 1st is what the window is.
Okay.
The window, it starts May 1st. Oh, you're talking the window for when
TV.
shows.
For when it had to air.
TV. They're trying to get more in line with the Emmy
Emmys.
schedule, so the window this year is a lot bigger. So a lot more competition too, but...
Right. I think that maybe I will submit for Pulse. I also worked really hard on Presumed Innocent, but I don't know that it's that.
I
It's
love that show. It joined,
but it's not. I don't know that it's MacGuffin worthy.
It joined the ranks of MASH and The Odd Couple, where the TV version was better than the theatrical version.
Oh, interesting.
And that's normally not the case. Normally, TV shows never live up to how great the features were. And like I said, with MASH and with Odd Couple, they so much more define the show and the characters than the movies did. And when I was watching Presumed Innocent, it was one of those shows that I wish I could have streamed the whole thing over the course of 1 or 2 days. I thought he was fantastic.
He was amazing.
The setup was amazing. And when I knew the movie well, And when I heard they were making a TV series that pretty much it wasn't a continuation from the movie. It was just the movie done again.
Yeah.
And I was like, how in the world are they going to find 10 hours of running film time for a movie that was able to wrap it all up in an hour and a half?
Yeah.
They did it well. It came out. We all were kind of tickled and delighted with how it came out. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was great.
It was wonderful.
I was
Yes.
really, really, and that was really hard to work on.
Yeah, submit them both.
Why was
What
it,
do you
why
have
was
to
it,
lose?
Why was it hard to work on?
It was okay. So this is what all prop masters come up against.
Because it's very straightforward.
It's straightforward, but there was two things. One is Jake's reputation preceded him. Jake Gyllenhaal is known to be really, really difficult.
Oh.
So for me, when I hear an actor is difficult to work with, I meet with them early.
Same thing.
And it's not disingenuine. It's really genuine. It's really authentic. And my intention is I'm really here to support your character.
Yeah.
And I want you to feel supported. That's my intention.
Yeah.
I meet with all the actors before a show, but if I know somebody is harder to work with, I find a kinship with them.
Same here.
And with Jake, I got very lucky. I also bring my dog to work,
Yeah.
Banksy, and he's massive. And Jake would say, I can identify with Banksy because Banksy's very reserved until you get to know him.
Yeah.
And so with Jake, I developed a nice camaraderie with in prep.
Yeah.
So that he felt safe.
And
he felt
he knows
like
that you're on
guys-
his side.
Exactly. And so our department was never part of his targeting.
Oh, cool.
And so we avoided that. And then the other part that was interesting is our director, a woman named Ann Zawitsky, and she's from Norway. She was like, I'm going to do these things, these little pops. She goes like, maybe like when they're doing a camera setup, I might pull another camera to like shoot some dead bees in the pool.
Oh.
So I managed with her to carve out time with her and her first AD
Yeah.
to go over the episode scene by scene and sort of like spitball
Yeah.
what the pops might be so that I could be prepared for them.
Yeah.
And then you had the writer's strike.
Yeah.
So then we had to cross the picket lines. And that was hard. We were at the ranch, at Warner Ranch, which is no longer. So crossing the picket lines was like, how do I navigate that? And so our art department made signs that said, we support you, but we have a mandatory call to come to work.
Yeah.
And
We
I
were
was
right in the middle of the writer's strike, too.
Yeah, and it was really hard. And I was pulling out one time, and I was a little cranky that day, I'm not going to lie. And this woman comes up, she goes, how dare you cross our picket line? And I go, do you even know what I do?
Yeah.
I go, because guess what? I have a mandatory call to work, and if I don't show up tomorrow, I will be replaced, not just for tomorrow, but if this show is to go 10 years, I won't be on it.
Yeah.
Do you want that on you?
Yeah.
And I mean, she kind of backed away, but
Yeah.
it was just, so that part was challenging. And then, that's what made the show more challenging.
Yeah. There's just a lot of elements.
Yeah.
And remind me, where does it take place in Pittsburgh?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah. And then, replicating it for Chicago was, it's always a challenge. But we had 500 background, and we had, like 20 it was, there were days where it was a lot, but it was great. And
The days where you wish you were the van driver.
it was like, but don't you guys ever feel this way? The scenes that take the most prep, and then you go and you see them shooting it, and it just looks normal, and
Well,
you
that's
say to
because
yourself,
you did what you were supposed to do.
yeah, but you say, God, normal is so much work.
Yeah.
Right.
Normal can be a lot of work.
Just replicating reality.
It takes a lot of work to make it look that easy.
Yeah, that's my motto. I work really hard to make this look that easy.
With that, I think we should. We've easily talked over an hour and a half, which is awesome. No, it's perfect. No, there's a lot of good stories, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I know this was so much fun.
It was great. If they're not available, I'll come co-host with you. I think
hell
it's really fun.
I'll add you to the list. That's awesome.
Okay, I would love it. But thank you so much. Really, this has been great.
No, this is awesome.
You just want to ride in the PMG limo, don't you?
Well, I had the helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also have a MacGuffin.
Yeah. The MacGuffin comes with a little bit more.
I should have brought the MacGuffin.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting. I gotta ask the next MacGuffin Award winner to come in with it now that
has to
we're on
be a
video.
prerequisite. From now on.
It's got to be in the corner next to the mic.
I love my MacGuffin.
Yeah,
it's got a very. It was very emotional.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I mean, I'm hoping one day to have one of my own. So I think we all are now as prop masters. So
I'm sure Lewis will make you one.
Yeah, no, come on now. And I mean, everybody else. So right now, actually, just to everybody listening, submissions are open by the time this airs. So if you're listening to this right now and you worked on a show the past year, go over to the MacGuffinawards.com and you can submit. And I think submissions will be open until September. Oh, no, I shouldn't even say that because I don't really know. But just get them in now. Let's start working on it now. I know Prop Masters with the last one, over 50% of the submissions came like in the final week that they were due. Yeah,
we're not used to it.
Last minute, I know. So yeah, if you had a show, get your submissions in now, and that'll be great. And then, where's my little paper? Here it is. Okay. Everybody else out there, thanks for turning into another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, brought to you by real working retired prop masters and associates. The associates are amazing with us. Our team is everything. If this is your first time listening, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment wherever you're hearing this or watching it. If you'd like to know more information about the Property Masters Guild, or if you have a question for us here on Prop Talk, go over to propertymastersguild.org. We're also on Instagram @_the PMG, and we're also on all other socials. So, yeah, I think that is it. And until next week.